I used to think you could measure trust in inches, the space a phone sits from the edge of the table, the distance between two toothbrushes and a cup, the gap between the door and the frame when someone says, "I'll be home by 10." I measured everything, not because I'm controlling, though that's what she'd later call me, but because I'm a building engineer in Chicago. I keep skyscrapers comfortable in winters that split your breath. My world is tolerances and margins. Valves either seat or they leak. Fans either spin or they stall. If something hums wrong, you hear it long before it fails. Her name, when I met her, was Natalie Quinn. She was 28, all angles and wool coat and the kind of laugh that made strangers look up at a bus stop on Halsted. She served coffee in the mornings at a place that wrote poems in milk foam and auditioned in the afternoons. I was 34 and practical to a fault. Our meet cute wasn't really cute. I fixed the cafe's thermostat after a service call from the landlord. She cracked a joke about men who talk to machines nicer than to people. I said, "I talk to anything that listens." She said, "Then you'll love actors," and smiled like she knew she'd see me again. We moved in together in a one-bed room in Ravenswood with radiators that hissed like gossip and a view of a red brick wall that wasn't ours. Natalie's world smelled like dry shampoo and script pages and thrifted scarves. Mine smelled like solder and coffee that tastes like you earned it. We made it work because we wanted it to, and because she made even failure look like rehearsal. When she said, "If something happens with the company out west, we might have to fly sometimes," I heard, "We're planting roots and also starting engines." I said, fine. I liked that her life had verbs. She liked that mine had nouns you could touch. For a long time, we were okay. Not a montage, just okay in the ways that feel like calm shared Google Calendar, joint Costco runs, a jar on the counter labeled future, even if future meant a better sofa first. She'd leave the house with smudges of eyeliner on her thumb, come home smelling like stage dust, throw her boots off with the relief of a person who'd been standing in front of strangers and giving them the parts of herself that applaud easily. I thought I understood the difference between what you perform and what you are. I thought a lot of things. The first hairline crack wasn't sexy, it was a postcard. It arrived in November with a picture of a dark theater on the front, the kind with a curved mezzanine and brass rails brushed by 1,000 jackets. On the back, "Can't wait to see you again, V. J. No address, no return." The stamp was from Milwaukee. Natalie saw it on the kitchen counter and said, "Fan mail for my improv thing?" with a shrug too fast. She called me baby and kissed my cheek and slid the card into a drawer with takeout menus. I wanted to ask who Jay was. I didn't. I tell people to listen for the hum before the failure, and then I ignore my own noise. Engineers repair other people's buildings because we can't fix our first mistake, thinking warning signs are for other men. That winter was loud. The city's snowplows ate the street corners. I took night calls down in steam tunnels, and Natalie booked a role with a storefront theater on Clark. "It's small," she said, "but the director has connections. Black box thing, a new play." She handed me a flyer, a rectangle of design and ambition. The name on it felt like something wrong with my eyes, Vera Hale in Lot 47. "Who's Vera?" I asked, making it a joke I hoped would be over fast. She didn't blink. "Stage name," she said. "Agents say Natalie Quinn reads like Weather Girl. Vera has bite." "Since when?" "Since? Always?" She got busy tying her hair up. "I told you. I must have mentioned it." She hadn't. I would have remembered, but she looked so sure and so bored by my confusion that I let it slide. People rebrand all the time. Writers add middle initials. Chefs open restaurants called after their grandmothers. Actors pick names that look good on a marquee. It's harmless, right? Just a name you wear like a jacket. And jackets can be taken off when you get home. Rehearsals ran late. Then later, she started leaving with a tote bag I didn't recognize and coming back with stories that sounded like sketches. We tried it in inverted gender casting today. It kind of worked. The intimacy coordinator is great, thank God. The playwright wants us to find our feral. I nodded and asked questions and learned how to care about a world where applause is currency. I learned names that weren't mine. Nora, the director with gray streaks and a black wardrobe. Julian, the donor who didn't look like a donor because he had tattoos and wore sneakers too white. And Caleb, the lead who had eyes that made everyone forgive him a half second earlier than they should. Caleb's 29. But he plays tired well, she told me one night, peeling an orange over the sink. "It's the jaw." "You have a lot to say about his jaw," I said, and tried to keep my voice from picking a fight. "It's an actor thing," she said, bright and harmless. "Don't be weird." "Don't be weird." I put the peel in the trash and swallowed everything I wanted to say with it. Opening weekend came with a nervous haircut and a new dress. The theater was black-a-box chic with a sponsor wall of names I didn't know but was supposed to respect. A chalkboard near the bar said, "We tell the truth here." I sat in the third row and watched Vera Hale be devastating. It was Natalie, and not lie at once, the way you can look at someone you love in a photo and think, that's them, but also, where did they go for a second? At curtain call, she stared into lights like a person drinking and bowed deeper when the applause got hot. After, Julian, the not-the-donor clapped me on the back and said, "You must be the ex." "Sorry?" I said, the word too soft. Natalie said you two were divorced but good friends. Wild. I could never. He laughed like the joke was someone else. My mouth did a thing all by itself. It smiled the way Midwestern mouths smile when they're bleeding. "I'm Daniel," I said. "We're close." He blinked like he'd been handed the wrong prop. "Right on," he said, then peeled off to order drinks for people you could tell were used to free things. I found Natalie in the crush near the green room door. "Why did Julian think we're divorced?" I asked, a quiet question in a noisy place. She kissed my cheek again like a stamp on an envelope and whispered, "It's cleaner, babe. It keeps things simple with the board. They like a narrative. I didn't want them Googling you and making you weird." Making me weird? Mad. Whatever. She waved at someone over my shoulder. "I told them we split, but it's amicable. It's just easier for my career." The word career slid into me like a cold thing. I stared at her like she wasn't the most familiar room I knew. Easier than the truth? She squeezed my fingers once and let go. "Don't do this here, please." She went back to her people. I went home. I stood in our bathroom looking at the toothbrushes, measuring their gap like it could hold our facts. I wanted to be the man who storms back into a bar and makes a speech. I was the man who checked the boiler relief valves on his way to bed because that's what I know how to fix. I started noticing. Not yelling, not confronting, not yet, just noticing, the way you learn to hear a bearing dying 2 floors away. A receipt in her coat pocket, the standard on Milwaukee Ave, 2 cocktails, oysters, a steak. That was not a post-show beer. That was a dinner you share with someone you intend to be interesting for. Uber trips past midnight headed to the West Loop. On nights she'd said they were running notes. A scarf I didn't recognize with cologne that wasn't mine, and wasn't mine, and wasn't mine, and wasn't mine, and wasn't hers. I told myself it was the business. I told myself she was Vera there and Natalie here and both can be true. I told myself a lot, and still I slept like a man holding an emergency shutoff in his fist and waiting for someone else's hand to reach. The Milwaukee thing kept scratching at me. J, the postcard. J, the donor. The program listed the board, Julian Hart, tattoos, sneakers, the same J who'd called me the ex, the same J who stood in the back of the theater like a man doing a magic trick called humility. I didn't hire a PI. I had friends. My cousin Gabe had done lighting design forever and knew the way stories moved through crews. I asked him if he knew Vera Hale. He smirked and said, "Stage name for Natalie Q?" "Yeah, man, she's great on stage. Offstage she's doing what people do when the room has ladders and only some of them lead to light." He didn't give me names until I asked and asked again. "Caleb's the coke lead, and Julian's got a hand in everything. He made half the city's black-a-boxes possible. People weigh 5. He also, don't get mad, likes to be the first person people call when they want to feel seen. It's a whole ecosystem. You can hate it or you can understand it. Hating it doesn't change the map." "What do I do with a map like that?" I asked. Gabe looked at me like I'd asked why the sun comes up. "You decide whether to live there." I started saving, not money facts. Screenshots of public Instagrams where a wrist I knew appeared at the edge of a frame near a bourbon I couldn't afford. Tagged locations at a hotel bar 2 blocks from the theater. A photo, a castmate posted from an after party where Natalie Vera stood with her head on Caleb's shoulder like she was tired, and that made it okay. Captions that said family and tribe and found home. Filtering them through compassion made it worse. Everyone is starved for tribe. That's why cults and theaters and startups feel the same if you close your eyes. The next twist arrived on a Saturday when the city thawed. Natalie was in a workshop from 10 to 6. I did laundry. The machines in our basement are older than some of our neighbors' children and sound like they're arguing about custody. While the dryer worked a miracle with our towels, I decided to tackle the hall closet. We all have that closet. Coats we don't love, boxes we don't open, a vacuum that eats earrings. Behind a boot box labeled Winter, I found a flat portfolio. Winter, I found a flat portfolio. Inside, headshots, her Vera ones, resumes with a line item I'd never seen, marital status, divorced. a press packet with a bio that started, Vera Hale is a Chicago-based actor whose work interrogates intimacy after rupture. It listed her divorce as a formative event. The words weren't cruel. They were just the opposite of true. Under that, another folder, a lease for a studio apartment in Andersonville month to month. Not ours. Natalie wasn't on it. Vera was. The emergency contact wasn't me. It was J. Hart. The mover-in date was 2 months back. The rent was low enough to be a favor. I sat on the floor of our hall listening to the dryer and read that lease until the paper felt soft. I took a picture of it with shaking hands. Then, because I am who I am, I put everything back exactly how I found it. I didn't want her knowing I knew until I knew what to do. You can't live with 2 sets of facts without one of them rotting. Our kitchen got quiet. We ate on different timelines. When she slept, I traced the shape of the woman I loved and tried to see which parts belonged to Natalie and which to Vera. People talk about masks like they're evil. Actors will tell you a mask can free what's true. I didn't know which was which. I just knew I was paying for both. I didn't burst into rehearsal. I did something pettier. I went to the studio on a Sunday when the mailbox was open because the buzzer was broken and slipped a letter addressed to Vera Hale into the slot. Inside, I put a copy of the lease and a copy of the program with Vera here, A, B-E-A, circled like a crime. On the back of the program I wrote, in my neat engineer handwriting, "Tell me who I am in your story." She didn't bring it up. A week passed. I went to work and made buildings breathe, and she went to notes and made strangers love her. On Friday, Linda, her mother, called me to ask what Natalie wanted for her dad's retirement dinner. "I can't keep up with her schedule," Linda said. "She said she'd come. She never misses family." I told Linda I'd drive us because that's what I do. I make things easy even when they shouldn't be. The dinner was in Oak Park at a restaurant that wants you to know it has opinions about tomatoes. Her father gave a speech about floors and finishing strong. He'd been a carpenter 40 years, and you could see all of them in his hands. After cake, Linda hugged me and whispered, "Take care of our girl." I said, "Always," and felt like I was signing a check on an account I didn't control. On the drive back, Natalie scrolled her phone and laughed at something shaped like a text bubble. I kept my eyes on Western Avenue, as if it could stay straight forever if you stared hard enough. "Did you get my letter?" I asked. She didn't look up. "What letter?" "The one I left at your studio." She stopped scrolling. "You went through my things." I opened our closet and found a new life. It's not like that. You have a lease. It's a safe place to work, a place to crash after shows, where your emergency contact is not your partner, but your donor. Don't say it like that. How should I say it? She finally looked at me and did the thing actors do when they want to move the scene away from the line you just said. She cried. It was good crying, not hysterical fragile. "I'm trying to make something of myself," she said. "None of this is what you think." "Then tell me what I should think." "I can't do this in the car." She wiped her face and turned toward the window. "Please, Daniel, not tonight." We didn't talk the rest of the way. At home, she packed a bag. "Where are you going?" I asked, already knowing. "Vera's place," she said, and I had to sit down because of how she said it, like we were 2 people and only one of us was real enough to deserve a place. "I slept the way you sleep when the building's alarms are off, but you still smell smoke. In the morning, I did the thing I tell all my new techs when they panic. I made a list, not of her sins, of my thresholds, what I needed to hear to stay, what I couldn't forgive, what would have to change in public, not just in our kitchen. By the time the coffee got cold, the list had 6 lines and none of them were clever. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Gabe. "You might want to see this. A link, an event page for a Monday, donor salon for Lot 47. Featuring selections performed by lead actors Cal and Vera, champagne by Hart & Co. Public. RSVPs required. No mention of spouses. No mention of the truth." I went. Not because I'm a masochist. Because the fastest way to know if you're crazy is to put yourself in the room where your version of reality is either confirmed or erased. The salon was in a loft with plants that cost more than our rent. People stood in small circles saying the word vital. The city knows how to dress for money without admitting it. Thrift store jackets over shoes you only buy after a promotion. Julian worked the room like he was a host and a guest at once. Caleb wore a shirt that said, "Intentions are not outcomes," which is a joke you can make when you've never had to live with either. "Vera, my Natalie saw me and flinched." A flinch she turned into a smile. "Daniel, you made it." She kissed my cheek in public like a woman who believes in her own fiction. "This is all very last minute," she said too brightly. "We're just doing pieces." "Pieces of what?" I asked, and she didn't answer because Julian was there with 2 glasses of champagne and a look for me like I was a proud ex who'd been civilized into attending. "Brother," he said, and I looked at his hand like it was a receipt I hadn't agreed to. The program started. Selections were read. People laughed in the right places and nodded in the ones where they wanted to look like they knew why. At the end, before the applause was done, Julian took the mic and did a thing I didn't see coming. He thanked Vera for her vulnerability in making art after the kind of personal rupture that would send a weaker person home. The room hummed, the way rooms do when fed a sentence they want to believe makes them better. When she told me about the pain of her divorce, he said, "I knew this was the story our community needed." He didn't see me move. I didn't feel myself stand. I just knew I was speaking out loud because everyone stopped making their polite noises. "I'm her divorce," I said. "I drove her here." Silence is not actually silent. It hums. It has texture. You could feel people deciding where to stand inside it. Natalie's Vera's face went very still. Then she did what she is trained to do. She took control of the narrative. "Daniel," she said gently, like a nurse to a patient who forgot where he is, "this is complicated. We can talk later." "No," I said. I pulled my phone from my pocket and held up a photo of the lease. "This is simple. This is a story built on a lie. You don't have to sleep with anyone to build a lie. You just have to stop telling the truth where it costs you. You told this room I was over so you could be new, and you told your family nothing so you could still be good." I looked at Julian. "And you like your causes tidy?" I looked at Caleb. "And you like your partners unencumbered?" I looked back at the person I loved. "And you like your partners unencumbered?" I looked back at the purse. "Sir," someone started, maybe a board member, maybe a man who writes checks with a memo line that says belief. I didn't let him finish. "I'm not here to ruin a show. I'm here to stop being furniture in a room where you all sit." I put the phone away. I should have left then. But Linda had texted me 3 times that day, "Are you two okay? Call me." Nats, she would find out somehow. I chose my way. "Next Sunday," I said to the room, but to her, "We're having dinner at your parents'. I'll be there. You will tell them your name." "Daniel," she said in a voice that was not for an audience, "please." "Sunday," I said, and left before anyone could make me hate them more or less. She came home that night like a storm you can see through but not stop. "You embarrassed me," she said, throwing the word like a glass that wouldn't shatter. "You built a career on the story that I was gone," I said. "You embarrassed yourself." "It's branding. It's protection. Board members ask questions. Men like Julian." "Men like Julian, what?" She stopped. She did the math. She picked the smaller sin. They listen more if they think you're theirs to save. "And are you?" I asked softly. "Theirs?" She sat on the edge of the couch and stared at the floor like it might unclench and swallow us. "Sometimes I'm no one's," she said. "I like who I am when they look at me like I matter." "And when do you like who you are with me?" She didn't answer. You can't drag an answer out of a person who needs applause to hear herself. Sunday came like a deadline. We drove to Oak Park in quiet that said more than arguments would have. Her mother opened the door with a dish towel on her shoulder and joy on her face. Her father hugged me with hands that built frames that don't sway. The table was set like a peace treaty, everything in the right place, everything saying, "Forgive already." Natalie helped her mom plate the roast, laughed at something about the neighbor's dog, kissed her dad on the head. She looked like the daughter they raised because she is, and because a mask can be a mirror depending on the light. When we sat, Linda reached for our hands the way she always does. "Grace," she said, and closed her eyes and thanked God for food and work and family. She said family like a wish and a fact. When she squeezed my fingers at amen, my throat did that tight burning thing we pretend is heartburn. I didn't make a speech. I didn't put a projector on the wall. I asked Natalie if I could talk to her parents alone in the living room, and they said of course, like there was no future where I would hurt them. We sat on the couch that had seen graduations and flu seasons and 3 different Christmas trees. I told them I loved their daughter. I told them she was brilliant. I told them she was also someone else when she left their house. I told them about Vera. I showed them the program with a name they didn't recognize. I showed them the lease. I told them the lease. I didn't say Julian's name because parents don't need to hold strangers when they're trying not to drop their child. Linda covered her mouth with her hand and made a sound like the start of a sob and the end of one at once. Her father stared at a point on the wall like he was measuring it. "Why would you do this?" he asked the heir, and then his daughter, and then no one. Natalie stood there, not sitting, like a defendant who refuses the chair. "Because I wanted to be myself," she said. It was almost right. It was close enough to true to be weaponized. Because casting directors don't want complicated. Because men with money don't donate to wives. Because I am more than your building, Daniel. "I never asked you to be a building," I said, quieter than I meant. "I asked you to be honest." Her father stood slowly, the way a man stands who doesn't shout. "Nat," he said, "it's not the name. Your mother's name wasn't her name until we married. Names are not the point. It's the lie. It's making a life on one." He looked at me with an apology I didn't know what to do with. "I'm sorry you had to carry this in here." Linda walked over to her daughter and touched her cheek like a mother does before telling a truth that will stay told. "You don't have to be smaller to be ours," she said. "You don't have to be someone else to be someone." Natalie didn't cry. She looked emptied, like she'd been playing a role called Braver Than Consequences, and the show had been canceled mid-run. "I can't undo it," she said. "People know me as Vera. Casting knows me as Vera. If I tell them I lied, I'm done." "You're not done," her father said. "You're different. You'll be the person who said it out loud." "You think the theater pays for that?" She laughed, and there was no joy in it. "You think I get roles for being honest?" I wanted to lie and say yes. I wanted to tell her that truth is a currency everyone accepts, but my world runs on physics and hers runs on taste and rumor. "I don't know," I said. "I know I can't be married to a story about myself that isn't true." We left with leftovers and a silence that didn't feel like anger. It felt like weather about to change. At home, she packed more than a bag. She took the scarves and the boots and the coffee grinder she said made better mornings. She left a key on the counter. "I'll sign whatever," she said, and I heard the tired, "Don't torch me online. Don't send the lease to magazines. Let me go." "I'm not interested in a spectacle," I said, and meant it. "I'm interested in a record." We divorced fast because fast was the only kind that didn't kill us slower. Her lawyer tried a few angles that called my sanity and my motives into question. My lawyer, a woman named Carla who had eyes that belonged on a surgeon and a voice like dry paper, returned each one with statute and mercy and phrases like "no reasonable expectation of privacy in a lobby and discovery will include board correspondence." The other side wanted no heat. They settled for equal division of the things that can be divided and a line about not discussing each other's private medical histories. Neither of us had any to discuss. The line was ritual. We signed. We sat in a courtroom with other people whose lives had broken in predictably unique ways. We walked out separate and the same, tired, lighter, sad in a way that wasn't dramatic enough for storytelling. That should be the end, but these things have tails. The theater sent a note to its mailing list about honoring artists' chosen identities, which is a sentence that does a lot of work hiding a smaller and more boring one we didn't check. Julian put his arm around a new actress in photos by spring. Caleb posted a selfie about owning your narrative because that's the kind of sentence that gets likes regardless of facts. I stood in front of boilers and listened to the building breathe and practiced doing the same without making metaphors out of machines. I saw Natalie once on Clark, spring again, sunshine doing its Chicago lie about how the lake won't be brutal tomorrow. She wore no makeup and carried a tote that said some theater name I didn't know. She looked like a person on her way somewhere. "Daniel," she said, not daring a hug. "I told them," she added without build-up, like that would be a kindness to say fast. "I told casting. I told the board. Not about you, about my name, about the story, about my name, about the story, about my name, about the story, about all of it." "What happened?" I asked. "Some doors closed," she said, and gave the smallest smile. "Some opened, smaller ones, truer." She took a breath. "I'm teaching a class to high school kids on honesty and scene work. It feels like punishment. It also feels like a thing I'll be proud of when I'm not proud of anything else." I nodded. We stood there like exes do when the world didn't explode and they still lost a house. "I hope you get rooms that don't make you choose which name is allowed," I said. "I hope you get someone who knows what to do with a man who listens," she said. We didn't hug. We walked away. I wanted to look back and didn't. Sometimes mercy is not the looking back. Months later, Linda mailed me a card with a picture of a bird I can't name. Inside, she wrote, "We still set a place for you in our prayers. Not at the table, don't worry." She added a P.S. "Natalie came for Sunday. She wore her own name." I put the card in a drawer without a shrine. Drawers are underrated. They hold the things you're not ready to perform with. I don't know if this is a success story. I don't know if you'll hear this and call me patient or stupid, cruel or fair, Midwestern or weak. I know that the space between two toothbrushes is still a measurement, and I know now that names are too. I know that a life can be built on a lie without anyone having to be a villain. You just keep choosing the version of yourself that gets the applause. I know that I will never again let the word branding live where the word marriage is supposed to be. If you're listening because you smell smoke in your own house, I can't tell you whether to pull the alarm or crack a window. I can tell you the hum means something. It always does. And if you find a version of your partner you weren't invited to meet, don't let yourself be furniture in the room where their applause happens. Walk in, say your name, then decide if you can live in the architecture you find. What would you do if your partner lived a double life with a different name? Would you expose it publicly or quietly walk away? Drop your take in the comments. If this story hooked you, hit like and subscribe. New confessional drops every week.